You are listening to Out of the Darkness by Clarissa Clarke. Alec may or may not have superpowers, and his parents may or may not be energy-draining aliens. If you have questions or concerns, go back to Chapter 5. All those who have been paying attention, I know you're ready, for panic melted and fear disappeared. Chapter 6. The heavy scent of fruit mingling with cinnamon and nutmeg hung in the air. It was the same smell he had followed through the starship. By the time he found the breakfast room that first day, it had been gobbled up. Now that he had tried it, he understood why. Alina loved the warm, fruity oatmeal, but she didn't always love to share. Small in age didn't mean small in stomach. She could eat more than her 6-year-old sister and be ready to eat again in 2 hours. Not a smidge of fat could be found on her because she never stopped moving. Running, climbing, swinging, sliding. He could hear her jumping in the kitchen already. She was trying to see into the bowl Reapy was loading with oatmeal. "Water or milk?" Reapy asked, like she did every morning. Alec grabbed a bowl and began shoveling oatmeal into it. "Milk from a cow?" Alina asked, like she did every morning. "No, milk from a nut." Alec and Reapy said this together, and Alina grinned at them. She watched Alec pour milk from a nut on his oatmeal and slid her bowl along the counter toward him. He splashed a bit inside, then sat her bowl on a stool, where she began cooking her food. As she mixed it all up, Reapy sat plates of strawberries in front of them. Alec was surprised the first time he ate here. There was no kitchen table. Instead, each person, or Zambosian, had their own stool. Well, they looked like stools to Alec, but the Zambosians called them loyals. They were made from almost any material and varied in height. He sat on the ground before his loyal, while Reapy filled a bowl for the absent Verity. "What is your sister doing?" "She fin for food," Alina replied, mouthful of strawberries. "She is blocking me," Reapy mumbled to herself while she worked. "Do you have your own language?" Alec asked, intrigued. Reapy wasn't responding, so he tried copying her. Alina giggled at the funny faces he made twisting his tongue to say the strange words. That got Reapy's attention. "Yes, Zambosians speak the ancient ape language, as do all of the ape races. I have learned several of the human languages as well, though it is largely regarded as a waste of time." In response to Alec's confused look, she explained, "We can communicate with you mentally. When you use your mind to communicate, you are understood by all. Even animals can understand you, although not everyone receives your message." All eyes turned to Verity as she entered the room. "What have you been doing?" Reapy asked, spoon halfway to her mouth. "Just practicing," Verity said. "Can we go to the park today?" Permission granted, she deposited food in her stomach and found socks for her sister before they set off. Along the way, Alec practiced moving blades of grass with his mind while Verity tracked Alina's vibration. They came to the rock that Alec had been trying to move for 3 days. Today it might have given a little wiggle, but turning to ask Verity and Alina proved pointless. They were busy circling a new addition in the park. "Why is this cage covered?" he asked. Like a flock of brilliantly colored bony birds, 22 bird cages were on display. Alina was climbing, eager to investigate the cage that was covered. "Shall we go find something at the playground to climb?" Reapy surprised them with her sudden appearance. She had been observing from a distance, feeling that Verity was hiding something. Alina distracted the spying giant by accepting her invitation, giving Verity the chance to ask, "Can you move it?" He shrugged. The bird cages were larger than anything he had tried to move with his mind, yet they weren't solid, which sent his wheels spinning. "Just lift it straight up and put it back down. That's not going to hurt anything." Scanning behind him, he found an impatient Alina dragging Reapy away. Verity sighed. "You're not doing anything wrong. Just do it." Her pushiness buzzed and battered, but instead of swatting, he focused. After several seconds, a purple peacock rose in the air. "Great! Do another!" So he lifted the bird cage next to it, and then the one next to that. "Do this one!" She was pointing at the one and only cloth-covered cage. She answered his nervous face with an exasperated look and said, "It's the same as the other ones. You're not going to mess it up." Still, he made sure no one was watching before he lifted it. The cover flit and fluttered, and he sucked in a sharp breath. He was staring at a bird cage filled with rocks. "You can do it, Alec." Apparently not, for the mud-green monstrosity twitched and shuddered, losing inches and tipping sideways. "You already lifted it once. You can do it again." Panic melted and fear disappeared as he realized she was right. He had lifted the intimidating owl 2 feet before the cover fell off. Confidence filled him, and the bony bird responded. It resumed its previous height, straightening out as Verity trumpeted, "I knew it!" Alec brought the pesky predator down. His knees wobbled and he slumped. Each rock in that cage was at least as big as the one he could only get to wiggle. Verity was doing a crazy dance around the bird cage, but stopped when she saw his face. He didn't know what to say to her. He almost thought she had something to do with it. She shook her head and said, "You did it. You said you could, so you did." "I never said I could move those rocks." "You moved those bird cages, so you knew you could move this one." "I see you have found yourself a new teacher." Reapy and Alina were beside them once again. "This ingenious lesson," Reapy said, "is designed to remind you that you move things with your mind. It is a mental ability. If you believe that rocks are harder to move because they are heavy, then they will be harder to move." Alex stared at the bird cage. "So, rocks aren't harder to move?" "Only if you say so. Your mind is very powerful, Alec. Many here are not as strong-willed as you. This can benefit you greatly, but it can also hinder you if you are not careful. It would be wise to align your thinking with the ways of the light." "And you," she turned to Verity. "This is what you were hiding from me? I believed it had something to do with stories. Perhaps next time I will be included in your secrets." Verity flopped on her back, grinning at the sky. She felt like she could do anything. The day was a success, and it wasn't even halfway over. Reapy went to prepare lunch while the children watched clouds float by. "She said you were blocking her," Alex said, remembering Reapy's strange behavior at breakfast. "What does that mean?" Verity's eyes flashed as she sat up. I filled my mind with thoughts of stories so she wouldn't know what I was really thinking. And it worked. She fell back onto the grass with a laugh. It really worked. But if your mind is closed, how would she know what you're thinking? She just knows. I don't understand it exactly, but it's a kind of mental ability. There was a member of the Grevlockrol race who learned to shield his thoughts and emotions from his masters. I'm not sure how he did it, but I found this way in a book. She was so excited that she barely paused for breath before continuing. There was also something about a mental shield, but I couldn't figure out if it was the same thing or something different. Like an annoying alarm, Alec's stomach interrupted her, and they started home for lunch. Home, he thought, looking around. The planet resembled Earth. Trees, flowers, lakes, oceans, and animals, Zambos had them all. He had never seen these species on Earth, but that didn't stop this place from feeling like home. The biggest difference between the two planets he had seen immediately from the starship. There was a haze, or fog, covering the planet. It wasn't until he got on the ground that he realized everything was shining with the light. Even the trees and bees on planet Zambos had light spirits. The sight continued to amaze Alec, and he wondered if he would ever see anything like it on Earth. Reepe's house resembled a big box. It was made of shiny metal that cooled his back as he studied his sandwich. If anyone had asked him to eat something meat-free 5 days ago, he wouldn't have done it. Today's lunch squished with sauce that kicked like Italian dressing. Reepe had wrapped cucumbers, tomatoes, and lettuce in a flatbed that had bits of seed and dried tomatoes to pick out. There were bowls of fruit and vegetables to munch on, too. Verity sat next to him sipping her drink, a mixture of ginger, lemon, and sugar added to some kind of fizzy water. Delicious. Most of the food they ate here looked like something he knew from Earth. He had been shocked to learn that Zambosians had cultivated lemon and ginger for millions of years and were responsible for introducing them to Earth. He leaned forward to share this information with Verity, but found her lounging on the grass, eyes closed. Now what am I supposed to do? Alina was sleeping inside on the couch. Verity was napping here. That left him and Reepe. It wasn't that he didn't want to spend time with Reepe. He just wasn't sure how he was supposed to act around her. She was his teacher, but she also cooked, cleaned, and did the laundry. Verity and Alina were so relaxed with her, like she was their friend rather than their teacher. Alec was quiet and shy. Perhaps you have some fear. He fought the urge to be defensive. Since learning of his light spirit, they had been communicating regularly. His spirit never told him what to do. Instead, it offered suggestions, leaving him to make the decisions. Why would I be afraid? What would I be afraid of? Reepe sat under a big burly tree, almost directly across from him. Her eyes were closed and she appeared to be asleep. This gave him plenty of time to study her. He wasn't afraid of her. An image of his parents popped into his mind. He watched as his mother yelled at him, and his father stood stiffly behind her. He was afraid of them. The more he tried to make them happy, the more it hurt when it didn't work. He looked around the yard, trying to distract himself from such unpleasant thoughts. His spirit remained quiet, but Alec had a feeling that it was waiting for him to finish. I can't make them happy, he told his spirit. Silence. so I pretend not to care, so it doesn't hurt. How? Alec had to think about that. Eventually he said, I put a wall around me. A shield. I built a shield with negative energy. Can I build a shield with positive energy? What do you think? A smile spread across his face. Now what are you afraid of? His spirit asked. Nothing, came Alec's confident reply. I understand. Reepe's eyes opened, studying him as he had studied her. Their eyes met as Alec thought, I don't have to be afraid. You just listened to Panic Melted and Fear Disappeared, Chapter 6, From Out of the Darkness by Clarissa Clarke. The next chapter will have us looking up. Slipping, spinning, falling. Chapter 7.